In the heart of Lusaka, under a bright sky and surrounded by blooming flowers, Zubaida stood in her white wedding dress, glowing with quiet beauty. She was the kind of woman who carried grace without trying, soft-spoken, kind, and deeply loved by everyone who knew her. Her wedding to Bakari, a well-known businessman, was the most talked-about event in town. People had counted down the days, family flew in from all over, friends dressed in colourful outfits. Everything looked like a dream. The garden venue was breathtaking, white chairs lined up neatly, petals scattered on the aisle, a soft breeze blowing through the trees. There was laughter, music, and the scent of roses in the air. Everyone smiled and whispered about how perfect Zubaida looked, and how lucky Bakari was to have found such a woman. Cameras clicked, glasses clinked. There was love everywhere, or so it seemed. Zubaida stood tall near the bridal suite, waiting for the ceremony to begin. Her heart beat fast, not from nerves, but from excitement. She had believed this was the start of forever. Everything she had hoped for, everything she had planned so carefully, was coming together. The dress fit perfectly, the food was just right, even the weather had cooperated. To everyone watching, it was a fairy tale. But beneath the surface, something dark was brewing, a truth no one expected, a storm that would soon crash into this beautiful moment and change everything. Just a few hours before the ceremony, while Zubaida was having her final makeup touch-up, her cousin quietly walked into the room. She didn't say much, just looked at Zubaida with eyes full of worry. Then, without a word, she held out her phone. Zubaida took it, confused, thinking it might be a sweet message or maybe a surprise from Bakari. But what played on that screen wasn't sweet at all. Her heart dropped. It was a video, clear as day. Bakari was in a hotel room, and he wasn't alone. He was kissing another woman, holding her like he once held Zubaida. The woman wasn't just anyone. She looked comfortable, familiar, like this wasn't the first time. The lighting in the video made it obvious. This had just happened. Then her cousin whispered, "It happened last night." Zubaida froze. Her fingers went cold. Her face turned pale. It felt like the ground had cracked under her feet. Her thoughts scattered. Was this real? Could it be someone who looked like him? But no. She knew that smile, that laugh, that shirt he wore just yesterday. Her heart pounded in her chest like a drum. Around her, makeup brushes moved. People chatted. Someone was fixing her veil. But none of it mattered anymore. The room was spinning. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just stared at the screen, the world around her becoming a blur. This wasn't just heartbreak. It was betrayal, deep and sharp. She had given him her trust, her love, her future. And just hours before they were supposed to say, "I do," he had broken it all. Her cousin gently took the phone back, tears welling up in her own eyes. Zubaida sat in silence, her heart breaking quietly while laughter echoed outside. Everyone thought this would be the happiest day of her life. But in that moment, everything changed with one whispered truth. Zubaida rushed into the bridal suite, her heart pounding like a drum inside her chest. She slammed the door shut behind her and leaned against it, trying to catch her breath. The noise from outside, the music, the laughter, the distant sound of cameras clicking, suddenly felt so far away. Her hands reached up and tore off her veil. She threw it to the ground, like it had betrayed her too. But still, no tears came. Not yet. She stood in front of the mirror, staring at the woman in the white dress. Her eyes were wide and full of pain, but also something else. Strength. Zubaida had always been soft-spoken, gentle, the kind of woman who loved deeply. But now, standing in that silence, she whispered to her reflection, "I deserve better." Her voice cracked, but her words were steady. Her fingers shook as she reached behind her to unzip the wedding gown, the one she had picked out with so much hope. The dress that was supposed to mark a beginning. She stepped out of it slowly, almost like she was peeling off someone else's story. The room was quiet, but her mind was loud. Thoughts came rushing in, memories of every promise Bakari had made, every moment she had trusted him, and now this. She didn't let herself fall apart. Instead, she walked to the wardrobe and pulled out a different dress, one she had packed just in case she needed something more comfortable later. It wasn't fancy, it wasn't white, it wasn't made for a bride, but it felt right. It felt like her. As she slipped into the new dress, something shifted inside her. The woman in the mirror was no longer the heartbroken bride. She was someone stronger, someone who had just been pushed to the edge, but refused to fall. She fixed her hair, wiped her lips, took a deep breath, and stood tall. Zubaida didn't know what would happen next, but she knew one thing. She was no longer waiting to be saved, or loved, or chosen. She was choosing herself. And in that quiet, powerful moment, she didn't just change her clothes, she changed her story. Zubaida stepped out of the bridal suite, no longer in her white gown, but in a simple, soft blue dress that flowed with every step. Her hair was still pinned, her makeup still perfect, but something in her eyes had changed. She walked slowly, quietly, toward the altar. The music played gently, guests turned their heads, smiles blooming on their faces. Some clapped, cameras flashed. Everyone thought she was about to say, "I do." Bakari stood at the altar, looking proud, confident, completely unaware. The garden was filled with flowers and love, but for Zubaida, the air felt heavy. Her heart pounded, but not from fear, from power. As she reached the altar, the officiant welcomed her with a warm smile and began to speak. But before a word could settle, Zubaida calmly reached for the microphone. There was a small pause. Everyone froze for a moment, unsure of what was happening. She turned to Bakari, looked him straight in the eyes, and took a breath. "I was supposed to marry a faithful man," she said, her voice clear and steady. Gasps spread across the garden. Bakari's smile slowly faded. He blinked, confused, nervous. Zubaida didn't flinch. "But last night you gave your heart and your lips to someone else, and today you thought I wouldn't know." The crowd went silent. You could hear the wind rustling the petals on the ground. She paused, looking out at the sea of shocked faces. Then she turned back to him. "I came here ready to give you my whole life, but now I'm giving something else. This moment, because I choose me." She handed the microphone back and stepped back from the altar. No tears, no begging, just quiet strength. People didn't know what to do. Some gasped. Some looked at each other in disbelief. Even Bakari couldn't speak. Zubaida took one last look at the man she almost married. And then, with her head held high, she turned around and began to walk away. Not as a broken bride, but as a woman who refused to settle for less than she deserved. That walk, though silent, said everything. She didn't come to say, "I do." She came to say, "I'm done." Gasps spread through the crowd like a wave. Everyone had been expecting vows, rings, and happy tears. But instead, they were watching something they would never forget. After Zubaida's words hit the air, time seemed to freeze. People stared at her, then at Bakari, unsure what to believe. Some guests covered their mouths. Others looked around, waiting for someone to say it was a mistake, but no one did. Bakari stepped forward, his voice shaky. "Zubaida, please. It's not what it looks like." His face turned pale. His hands moved nervously, trying to explain, but it was too late. Zubaida didn't yell. She didn't need to. Calmly, she reached into her small purse and pulled out the phone. She held it up high for everyone to see. The video played, the screen showing Bakari in a hotel room with another woman, laughing, kissing, holding her like she was his bride. The crowd gasped again, louder this time. People looked away. Some couldn't even watch. The silence that followed was heavier than any scream. It filled the air like thick fog. Even the birds in the trees seemed to go quiet. Zubaida stood tall, not with anger, but with calm strength. She didn't say another word. She didn't have to. Bakari's parents, who had been sitting in the front row, lowered their heads. His mother quietly wiped her eyes. His father let out a deep sigh, as if the shame was too much to carry. Friends looked at each other, unsure what to do. Some guests pulled out their phones, not to record, but to silently text their disbelief. No one cheered, no one clapped, but in that moment, everyone knew the truth. The dream wedding they had come to witness had just turned into a painful lesson in love, loyalty, and self-worth. Zubaida didn't just speak for herself, she spoke for every woman who had ever been lied to and deserved more. And though no one spoke, the message was clear. She had shown everyone what real courage looked like, not with shouting, not with drama, just with truth and the power of walking away from someone who didn't value her. Zubaida stood still for a moment, holding her bouquet tightly, the silence around her pressing like a weight. Her heart was beating fast, but her face stayed calm. Everything inside her hurt, but she refused to let it break her. She turned slowly, took a deep breath, and walked down the aisle, not toward a future with Bakari, but away from him and towards something new. As she reached the middle of the aisle, she stopped, and bent down gently. She looked at the little flower girl, no older than 6, who had been watching everything with wide eyes. With a soft smile, Zubaida placed the bouquet in the little girl's hands. The flowers that were once meant to celebrate a wedding now became a symbol of something greater: courage. At first, the entire garden was frozen in shock. No one moved. No one made a sound. People weren't sure what to do. This wasn't the ending they expected. But then, from the back row, one person clapped, just once. Then again, a few heads turned, and then another person joined in, and then another. Slowly, the claps grew louder, stronger, until the whole garden was filled with the sound of applause. It wasn't for the dress. It wasn't for the cake, or the music, or the fairy tale setting. It was for her, for Zubaida, for her bravery, for choosing herself when it hurt the most, for walking away with her head high instead of letting betrayal keep her down. People stood up. Some had tears in their eyes. Others just clapped with everything they had, sending her silent messages of love and respect. Even those who didn't know her personally could feel it. This was a moment they would never forget. Zubaida didn't look back, not once. She didn't need to see Bakari's face or the shocked expressions of the guests. Her heart already knew she had made the right choice. Every step she took was one away from heartbreak and one closer to healing. She didn't walk out like a broken bride. She walked out like a queen who knew her worth. And in that garden filled with applause, she didn't need a husband to feel whole. She already had everything she needed: her strength. Zubaida could have cancelled everything: the honeymoon, the hotel bookings, the flights. It would have made sense after what happened. But instead, she packed her bags, lifted her chin, and got on that plane to Zanzibar, alone. It wasn't a getaway for romance anymore. It was a journey to heal, to breathe, to begin again. When she arrived, the warm ocean breeze met her like an old friend. The sun kissed her skin gently, as if the world was reminding her that beauty still existed, even after heartbreak. She checked into the beach resort, where the staff expected a couple. They looked around for her groom. She just smiled softly and said, "It's just me." Her first few days were quiet. She cried into her pillow at night, and sometimes into the ocean during long walks on the sand. She let the waves carry her pain out to sea. She journaled every thought, pouring her broken heart onto pages that would never judge her. She wrote about betrayal, about confusion, about how love can hurt, and how it can also lead us back to ourselves. Each morning, she woke up before the sun and sat by the shore. She closed her eyes, listened to the waves, and breathed in peace. She began to meditate, not because she knew how, but because she needed something to help her sit still with the pain and make sense of it. Slowly, something inside her started to shift. She met strangers who didn't know her story. A kind woman who taught yoga on the beach, an old man who sold handmade bracelets and told her, even the ocean forgives itself. These little moments reminded her that life didn't end with a broken heart. It began with choosing to heal. By the end of the week, Zubaida no longer felt like the woman who had walked away from the altar. She smiled more, laughed a little. She danced barefoot in the sand at sunset, just for herself. She didn't forget what had happened, but she stopped letting it define her. When she flew back to Lusaka, she wasn't the same. She wasn't broken. She wasn't bitter. She was brighter, lighter, and stronger. Zubaida hadn't just taken a honeymoon. She had taken back her power. She returned not as the woman left behind, but as the woman who had found herself. No one expected it, least of all Zubaida. A guest at the wedding had quietly recorded the moment she stood at the altar, took the mic, and told her truth. The clip was only a few minutes long, but it carried a lifetime of courage. The video showed her calm voice, the pain in her eyes, the strength in her words, and the way she walked away without a single tear. The guest uploaded it, thinking it might inspire a few people. They had no idea it would explode. In just 3 days, the video hit over 2 million views. It spread like wildfire across social media. On TikTok, people stitched it with their own stories of walking away from toxic love. On Instagram, women reposted it with captions like, "This is what bravery looks like." And she didn't just walk away, she walked into her power. Even on Twitter, her name was trending. People from different countries, different backgrounds, all felt the same thing: inspired. Radio shows picked it up. Morning hosts debated whether they would have had the courage to do the same. Some called her a modern-day queen. Others said she was a reminder that love should never come at the cost of self-respect. Podcasts invited relationship experts to talk about what Zubaida did. She had become more than just a bride. She was a symbol. And the best part? Zubaida hadn't planned any of it. She hadn't made a speech for likes or followers. She had spoken from a broken heart and an honest place. That's what made it powerful. That's what made it real. Her phone didn't stop buzzing. Messages poured in from strangers, mostly women, thanking her for giving them the courage to leave, to speak up, to believe they deserved more. Some were still in pain. Others had been silent for too long. But Zubaida's story gave them a spark. At first, it was overwhelming. She didn't ask for fame. But slowly, she began to realize this wasn't just her healing. It was a healing for others too. Her voice had become a mirror, showing women their worth. Without meaning to, Zubaida had started something bigger than herself. A quiet revolution of self-worth. One that all began with a single truth spoken at the altar. Months had passed since the day Zubaida walked away from the altar. Since then, her life had changed in ways she never imagined. Her small boutique in Lusaka was now buzzing with new customers, many of them inspired by her story. Her confidence had bloomed. She smiled more, laughed more, and carried herself like a woman who had survived a storm and come out shining. One quiet afternoon, as she was arranging new dresses in the front window, she heard the bell above the door ring. She turned around, and there he was, Bakari. He stood there, awkward and unsure, holding a bouquet of roses that already looked out of place. His suit was perfect, his hair styled, but his eyes gave him away. There was guilt, regret, and something else, hope. He looked at her like she was the last chance he had. "I made a mistake," he said softly, stepping closer. "I've thought about you every day. I was stupid. I miss you." Zubaida didn't flinch. She didn't look angry. She simply looked at him the way you look at someone you've finally outgrown. Calm, unshaken, powerful. She gave a small smile, the kind that says everything without needing to shout. "You're right," she replied. "You did make a mistake, but so did I, thinking you deserved me." Bakari's face fell. He tried to say something else, but she had already turned. She walked away from him without hesitation, just like she had on their wedding day. But this time, it was even easier. The women working in the boutique had seen it all. One clapped quietly. Another whispered, "Queen energy." Zubaida didn't say anything more. She went back to adjusting the dresses, humming softly to herself. Bakari left, his shoulders heavy, the door closing behind him like the end of a bad chapter. Zubaida didn't need closure. She had already given herself peace. She had built a new life, one where she didn't wait for someone to love her right. She chose to love herself first. This wasn't just a moment of rejection. It was a full-circle victory, a quiet, beautiful reminder that the woman who once stood heartbroken in a bridal suite was now walking freely into a future she created on her own terms. After everything she had been through, Zubaida knew one thing for sure. Her story wasn't just hers. So many women had reached out after the video went viral, sharing their own pain, their own stories of betrayal, and how they stayed silent for too long. That's when the idea came to her. She didn't just want to move on. She wanted to create something powerful, something that could help others rise too. She opened her own bridal line and named it Altered. The name was a message in itself, a play on the word altered, meaning changed, transformed, because that's exactly what she had become. Every gown she designed wasn't just about beauty or lace or sparkle. It was about strength. Each dress had a story. Some had hidden messages stitched into the seams like, "Know your worth" or "You are enough." Others were bold, with strong lines and daring cuts, made for women who refused to shrink themselves. Brides came not just to buy dresses, but to feel seen. They walked in broken and left standing taller. Zubaida didn't just sell wedding gowns. She helped women choose themselves, even if that meant walking away from a love that didn't serve them. People no longer called her the bride who walked away. They called her a movement, a voice, a force. Zubaida had turned heartbreak into hope, betrayal into business, and pain into purpose. Because a queen like her, she doesn't need a king who betrays. She builds her own kingdom with grace, power, and her head held high.